The mop clattered to the marble floor as strong hands gripped Amara's wrists. Her heart hammered against her ribcage as she stared into the eyes of the man who had just cornered her in the supply closet of the Golden Meridian Hotel's executive floor. But this wasn't an attack. This was something far more complicated. "I know who you are," Chidi whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "I've known for weeks now, Amara Okonkwo. You're not just a cleaner. You're the owner of this entire hotel. This whole thing has been a lie." Amara's breath caught in her throat. The secret she'd guarded so carefully for 3 months was unraveling in the worst possible way. The yellow cleaning uniform that had been her disguise suddenly felt like a costume in a play that had gone terribly wrong. Outside the closet door, the sounds of the hotel's grand opening gala echoed through the hallways. Champagne glasses clinked, laughter rang out, and Lagos's elite celebrated the city's newest luxury establishment. They had no idea the owner was hiding in a supply closet, her carefully constructed plan crumbling around her. "Chidi, please," she started, but he stepped back, hurt flashing across his handsome face. "Everything we shared, every conversation, every moment when you let me buy you lunch because you said you couldn't afford it, was that all part of some sick game to you?" But before Amara could answer, before she could explain why a billionaire would scrub toilets and mop floors in her own hotel, the closet door burst open. 3 months earlier, Amara Okonkwo stood in her penthouse office overlooking Victoria Island, staring at a stack of wedding invitations on her desk. Another proposal. The 5th this year. This one from a prominent banker who had never once asked her about her dreams, her fears, or what made her laugh. He'd only talked about mergers and the power their union would create. At 32, Amara had built an empire. She'd turned her late father's struggling real estate business into one of West Africa's most successful hotel chains. She had wealth that most people couldn't imagine, influence that opened every door, and a loneliness that kept her awake at night. "They only see the money," she told her younger sister Ngozi during their weekly phone call. "Not one of them sees me." Ngozi, ever the practical one studying medicine in Accra, had laughed. "Then make them see you without the money, sis. Didn't you always say Daddy taught us that true character shows when people think you have nothing to offer them?" The idea had seemed ridiculous at first. But as Amara watched the construction of her newest hotel near completion, a wild plan began to form. What if she could work in her own establishment, anonymous and ordinary? What if she could meet someone who would know her as just Amara, not Amara Okonkwo, the billionaire hotel magnate? Her best friend and business partner, Folake, had called her crazy. "You want to clean toilets? You, who hasn't cleaned your own house in 15 years. "That's exactly the point," Amara had insisted. "I need to remember what real life looks like. And maybe, just maybe, I'll meet someone real." The transformation had been easier than expected. Amara hired managers to run the hotel's opening preparations while she enrolled herself on the staff roster as Amara Nwosu, a single mother of one who needed the job desperately. She moved out of her mansion and into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Yaba. She learned to take buses to budget for groceries, to understand the weight of a long day's work for modest pay. And then she met Chidi Okafor. He was the hotel's assistant operations manager, 28 years old, with an engineering degree from the University of Lagos and dreams of eventually opening his own business. He'd grown up in Ajagunle, worked his way through school, and sent money home to his mother and 3 younger siblings every month. Their first conversation had happened in the staff cafeteria. Amara had been sitting alone, exhausted from her first week of actual manual labor, when Chidi sat down across from her. "First week is always the hardest," he'd said with an easy smile. "I'm Chidi. I've seen you on the 3rd floor. You're doing a good job." That simple kindness, that acknowledgement of her work rather than her appearance or status, had touched something deep inside her. They'd started having lunch together. Then coffee breaks. Then long conversations after shifts about everything from Nigerian politics to their favorite childhood memories. Chidi told her about his father, who died when he was 15, leaving him as the man of the house. About his determination to lift his family out of poverty. About his belief that hard work and integrity mattered more than shortcuts and connections. Amara, carefully maintaining her cover story, shared edited versions of her own truths. She talked about her father's lessons about character and dignity, about feeling invisible sometimes, about wondering if anyone would ever see the real her. "I see you," Chidi had said one evening as they walked to the bus stop together. "You're different from anyone I've ever met, Amara. There's something special about you." If only he knew how different she really was. As weeks passed, Amara found herself falling. Not for grand gestures or expensive gifts, but for the way Chidi saved half his lunch to take home to his youngest sister. For how he stood up for a junior staff member being bullied by a supervisor. For the poetry he wrote in a worn notebook during his breaks. For the way he looked at her like she was precious, even in her yellow cleaning uniform with her hair tied back in a simple scarf. But the lies were piling up. When Chidi offered to help her with her rent, she'd had to invent excuses. When he'd wanted to meet her child, she'd created elaborate stories about her daughter staying with relatives. When he'd shared his dreams of one day having enough capital to start his own small hotel, she'd had to bite her tongue to keep from offering to finance it on the spot. The night before the hotel's grand opening, Chidi had found her cleaning the executive suite's windows, tears streaming down her face. The pressure of the deception had finally cracked her composure. "What's wrong?" he'd asked, genuine concern in his voice. "I'm not who you think I am," she'd whispered. "I know exactly who you are," he'd replied, gently wiping her tears. "You're a strong, beautiful, hardworking woman who deserves better than she's got. Whatever you're running from, whatever secrets you're keeping, I can wait until you're ready to share them." Now, standing in that supply closet with her secret exposed and Chidi's hurt eyes boring into her soul, Amara realized she'd made a terrible mistake. Not in disguising herself, but in believing she could control how the truth would come out. The person who'd burst through the door was Folake, her eyes wide with panic. "Amara, you need to come now. Your mother just arrived at the gala. She's asking for the owner, and she's about to blow your cover in front of everyone including the governor. Before you continue with this story, I need to know something. Where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. Are you in Lagos, New York, London, or somewhere else entirely? I love connecting with viewers from all over the globe, so let me know where you're joining us from today. Now, what would you do if you were Amara? Would you come clean to everyone at once? Or would you try to maintain the disguise just a little longer? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Amara stood frozen between two impossible choices. Behind her, Chidi waited for an explanation that could either save or destroy whatever they'd built together. In front of her, Folake's urgent expression warned of a disaster unfolding in the grand ballroom where Nigeria's most powerful people had gathered. "I have to go," Amara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course you do," Chidi replied, his tone cold in a way she'd never heard before. "The billionaire has more important things to do than explain herself to the help." The words stung like a slap, but Amara didn't have time to respond. She pushed past Folake and hurried toward the service elevator, her mind racing. Her mother, Amara Okonkwo, was a force of nature who had never approved of Amara's unconventional experiment. If she revealed the truth now, in front of the governor, the media, and Lagos's elite, the humiliation would be complete. Worse, the story would spread like wildfire. The headlines would write themselves. "Billionaire plays dress-up while real workers struggle." It would undermine everything she'd tried to prove, everything she'd learned. Amara ducked into a service bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. The cleaning uniform that had felt like freedom 3 months ago now felt like a prison. She made a decision. Stripping off the yellow uniform, she reached for the emergency designer dress she'd hidden in her locker weeks ago, just in case. The silk navy gown slid over her skin like a second identity. She let down her hair, applied makeup with shaking hands, and transformed back into Amara Okonkwo, hotel magnate. But inside, she still felt like Amara Nwosu, the cleaner who'd finally understood what it meant to work for every naira, who'd learned the names of every staff member's children, who'd fallen in love with a man who valued character over bank accounts. The ballroom was a spectacle of wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over women in designer gowns and men in tailored suits. Amara's entrance drew immediate attention. Whispers rippled through the crowd as people recognized her. Her mother stood near the governor, her elegant frame draped in traditional iro and buba made from the finest oso oak fabric. Chioma's eyes locked onto Amara with an intensity that could melt steel. "Ah, there she is." The governor's voice boomed across the room. "The woman of the hour. Amara Okonkwo, your new hotel is magnificent." Amara smiled, slipping seamlessly into her public persona. She made her way through the crowd, accepting congratulations and deflecting questions about her notable absence from the hotel during its construction phase. "I wanted my team to shine," she explained smoothly. "This hotel's success belongs to every person who worked to build it." But her mother wasn't satisfied with diplomatic answers. As soon as they had a semi-private moment near the windows overlooking the Lagos skyline, Chioma gripped Amara's arm. "Where have you been for 3 months? Your assistant kept making excuses, but I'm not a fool, Amara. What have you been doing?" "Learning, Mama. Learning what I needed to know." "By disappearing? By worrying me sick? Your father built this empire for you to lead, not to abandon for some foolish experiment." Amara felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. "Daddy also taught me that leadership means understanding the people you serve. How can I run hotels if I don't understand the people who make them work?" Before Chioma could respond, a commotion erupted near the ballroom entrance. Amara turned to see hotel security struggling with someone trying to enter. Her heart dropped when she recognized Chidi, still in his work clothes, his face set with determination. "I need to speak with Ms. Okonkwo," Chidi's voice carried across the now quiet ballroom. "It's urgent hotel business." The head of security, a man named Tund who'd been hired by the management team and didn't know Amara's secret, moved to forcibly remove Chidi. But Amara rushed forward. "Wait, let him through. He's my assistant operations manager." Chidi walked into the ballroom, and Amara saw the moment he registered her transformation. His eyes widened, taking in the expensive dress, the professional makeup, the way she commanded the room's attention. She watched him reconcile the woman before him with the cleaner he'd shared lunch with for 3 months. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Okafor?" Amara kept her voice professional, though her hands trembled. Chidi's jaw tightened. "Yes, ma'am. There's a situation with one of the cleaning staff that requires the owner's immediate attention. A woman named Amara Nwosu. She's been missing from her post, and there are questions about whether she ever really existed." The ballroom had gone completely silent. Every eye was on them. Amara could feel her mother's confusion, Folake's panic, and the predatory interest of journalists who smelled the story. "I see," Amara said carefully. "Perhaps we should discuss this in private." "No," Chidi said, his voice steady but laced with pain. "I think everyone here should know the truth. You talk about understanding the people who make your hotels work, but you turned their lives into an experiment. You lied to people who trusted you, who cared about you. People who thought you were one of them." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The governor looked confused. Chioma's face had gone pale. And Amara knew that the moment of truth had finally arrived. She could deny it, claim Chidi was mistaken or disturbed. Her lawyers could have him removed. Her PR team could spin the story. But as she looked into his eyes and saw the betrayal there, she realized that the only thing worse than the truth coming out would be adding more lies to the pile. "He's right," Amara said, her voice clear and strong. "For the past 3 months, I've been working in this hotel as a cleaner named Amara Nwosu. I wanted to understand the business from the ground up, to know the people who make places like this run. But more than that, I wanted to know if anyone could see me, the real me, without the money and the name." The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. Camera flashes went off as journalists captured the moment. The governor looked amused. Chioma looked furious. And Chidi looked broken. "And did you find what you were looking for?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Amara said, her eyes locked on his. "I found someone who saw past everything that didn't matter and valued everything that did. I found someone who made me want to be better, to do better. I found someone I could love." "Love?" Chidi's laugh was bitter. "You don't lie to people you love, Amara. You don't manipulate them and use them for your social experiments. You're right, she said, tears now streaming down her carefully made-up face. I was wrong. I was selfish and thoughtless, and I hurt you. I hurt all the people who welcomed me as one of their own. But everything I felt was real. Every conversation, every moment, every word was real. A new voice cut through the tension. So the rich lady wanted to play poor? It was Patience, one of the senior cleaners who'd taken Amara under her wing during her first week. She stood at the ballroom entrance with several other staff members, all still in their uniforms. You wanted to see how the other half lives before you went back to your mansion? Amara turned to face them, these women who'd shared their lunch with her, who'd taught her the best way to clean windows, who'd confided in her about their struggles and dreams. The shame was overwhelming. I never meant to mock you or your lives, Amara said. I have tremendous respect for the work you do. I learned more in 3 months working beside you than I learned in years of business school. But you still lied, Patience said. You still pretended to struggle while you could have written a check for any of our problems without blinking. The accusation hung in the air, undeniable and true. Amara had no defense because there was no defense. She'd been privileged enough to choose poverty as a temporary experience while the people around her lived it as their permanent reality. You're absolutely right, Amara said. And I'm sorry. I can't undo what I did, but I can promise that everything I learned will matter. This hotel will have the best wages, the best benefits, the best working conditions of any hotel in Lagos because I now understand what those things mean. Money doesn't fix broken trust, Chidi said. He turned to leave, but Amara reached for his arm. Please, Chidi. Give me a chance to explain properly. Not here, not like this. Just you and me, the way we used to talk. He looked down at her hand on his arm, and for a moment, she thought he might soften. But then he gently removed her hand. The woman I used to talk to doesn't exist, he said. She was a character you played. I don't know who you really are, Amara Okonkwo, and I'm not sure I want to. He walked out of the ballroom, leaving Amara standing in her designer dress in front of Lagos's elite, more alone than she'd ever been in her yellow cleaning uniform. The party recovered, as parties among the wealthy always do. People returned to their champagne and their conversations, though Amara knew she'd be the subject of gossip for months to come. Her mother pulled her aside, alternating between fury at the deception and grudging respect for the boldness of it. But Amara barely heard any of it. Her mind was on Chidi, on the pain in his eyes, on the connection they'd shared that now seemed irreparably broken. She'd wanted to find true love by stripping away the barriers of wealth and status. Instead, she discovered that the biggest barrier was her own dishonesty. As the night wore on, Amara slipped away from the celebration and made her way to the hotel's roof, a place she'd discovered during her cleaning shifts where she could see all of Lagos spread out below. The city lights twinkled like earthbound stars, and she wondered how many other people out there were wrestling with the consequences of their choices. Her phone buzzed with a message from Folake. The story is already online. It's going viral. We need to do damage control. But Amara wasn't thinking about damage control. She was thinking about Chidi's notebook of poetry, about the way he'd looked at her when she was just a cleaner, about the possibility that she'd found and lost the real thing all in the same moment. What she didn't know was that 3 floors below, Chidi sat in his small office, staring at a photograph on his phone. It was a picture Patience had taken without them knowing, showing Amara in her cleaning uniform and Chidi laughing at something she'd said, both of them glowing with a happiness that couldn't be faked. And in his other hand, he held something that would change everything. A letter he'd written to Amara weeks ago, confessing his feelings and his own secret, a secret he'd been too afraid to share. A secret that would prove they'd both been hiding truths from each other. But neither of them knew yet that the real story was just beginning, and that sometimes the path to true love requires walking through the fire of complete honesty, no matter how much it burns. The morning sun cut through the blinds of Amara's penthouse like an interrogation light. She hadn't slept. The headlines on her tablet screamed variations of the same story: Billionaire's undercover scheme exposed, hotel heiress plays poor, love or lies. Amara Okonkwo's secret life. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing. Investors wanted explanations. Board members demanded emergency meetings. But the only call Amara wanted to receive never came. Folake arrived at 8 with coffee and crisis management strategies. "We can spin this," she said, spreading newspapers across the dining table. "Emphasize the positive. You were researching to improve working conditions. You were committed to understanding your employees. Some people are already calling it brilliant and compassionate. And the others? They're calling it exploitative theater. There's a hashtag trending, #RichPeopleCosplay. Folake winced. "But here's the thing, some of your staff are defending you. Patience gave an interview this morning." Amara grabbed the tablet and found the video. Patience sat in her small apartment in Suralere, her face serious but thoughtful. "Yes, she lied about who she was," Patience told the interviewer. "But she also showed up every day. She did the work. She didn't complain or act like she was too good for it. And she listened. Really listened. I told her about my daughter's school fees, and you know what? This morning I found out the hotel is implementing a new education scholarship program for staff children. That didn't exist yesterday." Amara's throat tightened. She'd sent that directive to HR at 3 in the morning, unable to sleep, trying to make something good come from the disaster. "So you forgive her?" the interviewer pressed. Patience considered this. "Forgiveness isn't mine to give. She didn't just lie to me. She lied to someone who loved her. That's between them and God." The interview shifted to footage of the hotel, where reporters had cornered Chidi in the parking lot. Amara leaned forward, desperate to see his face, to gauge his state of mind. "Mr. Okafor, how do you feel about being deceived by Ms. Okonkwo?" Chidi's expression was unreadable. "No comment." "Were you in a romantic relationship with her?" "No comment." "Do you feel used?" Chidi stopped walking and turned to face the camera. "I feel like a private matter was turned into public entertainment. I feel like everyone needs to respect boundaries and let people process things in peace." Then he'd gotten into his car and driven away, leaving Amara staring at the frozen frame of his face, trying to read emotions in the pixels. "You need to talk to him," Folake said gently. "Not for the PR, but for you. I've never seen you like this over a man." "He won't see me. I've called, texted, even sent messages through other staff members. He's blocked me completely." "Then you need to give him time and space. Meanwhile, we have bigger problems. Your mother has called an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. She's not happy, Amara." The boardroom of Okonkwo Holdings was a temple of power and old money. Portraits of Amara's late father and grandfather watched from the walls as 12 board members took their seats around the polished mahogany table. Chioma sat at the head, her face a mask of controlled fury. Amara entered in a crisp business suit, her armor against the judgment she knew was coming. She took her seat, meeting each board member's eyes with as much confidence as she could muster. "Let's begin," Chioma said coldly. "Amara, you've embarrassed this family and this company with your reckless behavior. You disappeared for 3 months, leaving critical business decisions in limbo, to engage in what can only be described as a vanity project." "It wasn't vanity, Mama. It was research." "Research?" Uncle Emeka, her father's oldest friend and the company's CFO, shook his head. "You could have hired consultants, conducted surveys, done focus groups. Instead, you chose deception." "Those methods wouldn't have given me the truth," Amara argued. "People tell consultants what they think consultants want to hear. I needed to experience reality." "And did this reality show you anything worth the damage to our reputation?" Another board member, Mrs. Adeyemi, asked sharply. Amara stood, her passion overriding her caution. "It showed me that we've been running our hotels like machines instead of communities. It showed me that our staff retention problems come from treating people as replaceable parts instead of valued humans. It showed me that the difference between a good hotel and a great one isn't the thread count of the sheets or the marble in the lobby. It's whether the people who work there feel respected and heard." She pulled up a presentation on the screen, statistics she'd compiled over sleepless nights. "Since I started working undercover, I've documented 347 specific instances of inefficiency, waste, and poor management that were invisible from the executive level. I've identified 17 systemic problems that, when fixed, will save us millions while improving worker satisfaction. And I've learned that our competitors are succeeding not because they have better locations or bigger marketing budgets, but because they treat their people better. The room fell silent as Amara clicked through her findings. She showed them turnover rates compared to industry standards, the correlation between worker satisfaction and customer reviews, the hidden costs of the current system. I made mistakes, Amara continued, her voice softer now. I hurt people I care about. But the information I gathered is invaluable. We can either see this as a scandal or as an opportunity to revolutionize how we do business. Uncle Emeka leaned back in his chair, studying her. And the young man? The operations manager? Amara's professional mask slipped for a moment. That's personal. Nothing is personal when it affects this company, Chioma said. If he decides to sue for emotional distress or workplace harassment, we could face serious legal consequences. Chidi would never do that. You mean the Chidi you knew as a cleaner? Or the real Chidi who now knows he was part of an experiment? Mrs. Adeyemi's tone was cutting. You don't actually know him at all, do you? The words hit harder than Amara expected. Because they were true. She knew the Chidi who thought she was a struggling single mother. She knew the Chidi who shared his dreams with someone he saw as an equal. But she didn't know how the real Chidi, the one who now understood the full scope of the deception, would react. The board meeting continued for 2 more hours. Eventually, they reached a compromise. Amara would implement her reforms at the Golden Meridian as a pilot program. If they succeeded, they'd roll out company-wide. If they failed, Amara would step down as CEO and move into a purely advisory role. It was a gamble, but Amara had already lost so much that risking her career seemed almost trivial compared to the hole in her chest where Chidi used to be. That evening, Amara returned to the hotel. Not as the owner, but not quite as a cleaner either. She changed into simple clothes and pulled her hair back, trying to find some middle ground between her 2 identities. She found Patience in the break room, having dinner before the evening shift. The older woman looked up, her expression wary but not hostile. May I sit? Amara asked. Patience gestured to the chair across from her. It's your hotel. You can sit anywhere you want. I saw your interview. Thank you for what you said. I didn't do it for you. I did it because it was the truth. Patience took a bite of her jollof rice. You hurt people, Amara. But you also help some of us. The scholarship program, the wage increases you announced this morning, those matter. But they don't fix what I broke. No, they don't. Money never does. Patience studied her carefully. You really love him, don't you? Chidi. Amara nodded, not trusting her voice. Then you need to understand something. Chidi's not like other men. He's been poor his whole life, worked for everything he has. His dignity is all he's got. When you pretended to be poor, you made a mockery of the struggle that defines his life. You turned his reality into your costume. The accuracy of the observation made Amara flinch. I never thought of it that way. Rich people never do. Patience's tone wasn't cruel, just matter-of-fact. But here's something else. Chidi's got his own secrets. Things he didn't tell you either. Maybe that's why he's so angry. Not just because you lied, but because he understands the weight of hiding the truth. Before Amara could ask what she meant, Patience's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and stood abruptly. I have to go. My daughter's school is calling. Is everything okay? Patience's expression softened slightly. It will be. Thanks to that scholarship program, she can stay enrolled. That's real, Amara. Whatever your reasons were for doing what you did, the good that comes from it is real. Hold on to that. After Patience left, Amara sat alone in the break room, surrounded by the echoes of conversations she'd had in this very spot when she was just another worker. She pulled out her phone and opened her messages to Chidi, looking at the wall of unread text she'd sent. Then she saw something that made her heart stop. 3 dots appeared, indicating he was typing. The message that came through was just an address in Ibute Meta and a time, 10 p.m. tonight. No explanation. No context. Just a chance. Amara checked her watch. She had 3 hours to prepare for a conversation that would either heal everything or destroy it completely. She didn't know what Chidi wanted to say, what secrets Patience had hinted at, or whether this meeting would end in reconciliation or final goodbye. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty: this time, there would be no more lies. Whatever happened, she would face Chidi as her complete, authentic self, and she would finally hear the truth from him as well. As she left the hotel and headed into the Lagos night, Amara didn't notice the figure watching from the parking garage. Someone who'd been following her movements all day. Someone who had their own reasons for wanting to know the truth about Amara Okonkwo's secret life. Someone who was about to make everything infinitely more complicated. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Have you ever kept a secret that ended up hurting someone you cared about? Or maybe you've been on the other side, discovering that someone you trusted wasn't who they said they were? How did you handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments because your experiences might help others going through similar situations. And if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and share it with a friend who loves a good romance with real depth. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The address led Amara to a part of Butte Meta she'd never visited before, even during her 3 months as a cleaner. The street was narrow, lined with modest buildings where families spilled out onto balconies to catch the evening breeze. Children played football in the fading light while women sold roasted plantain and groundnuts from makeshift stands. Amara's driver had looked concerned when she'd insisted on being dropped off 2 blocks away, but she needed to walk this final distance alone. She needed to arrive as herself, not as the billionaire stepping out of a luxury car. The building Chidi had directed her to was a 3-story structure with peeling yellow paint. Amara climbed the external staircase to the 2nd floor, her heart pounding with each step. She found the apartment number and knocked. Chidi opened the door immediately, as if he'd been waiting right there. He wore simple jeans and a t-shirt, his feet bare, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. "Come in," he said finally, stepping aside. The apartment was small but immaculately kept. A worn sofa sat against one wall, facing a modest television. Books were stacked everywhere, on shelves, on the coffee table, on the floor. Through an open doorway, Amara could see a tiny kitchen where a pot of stew simmered on the stove. "This is my mother's place," Chidi said, following her gaze. "She's visiting my sister in Ibadan this week. I asked you here because I needed neutral ground. Not the hotel, not your penthouse, somewhere real." Amara nodded, understanding. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. Sit." Chidi gestured to the sofa. He took the chair across from her, maintaining distance. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past 2 days. A lot of anger, a lot of hurt, a lot of confusion. Chidi, I'm so sorry. I know that's not enough, but..." He held up a hand. "Please, let me talk first. I need to say this before I lose my nerve." Amara fell silent, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "When Patience told me who you really were, my first reaction was rage. I felt like a fool. Like everything we shared was contaminated by the lie." Chidi's voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. "I kept thinking about all the times I offered to help you with money, all the times I paid for your lunch because I thought you were struggling. The humiliation of that, of being the poor guy trying to help the secret billionaire, it burned." Tears slipped down Amara's cheeks, but she didn't interrupt. "But then I started remembering other things. The way you really listened when I talked about my family. The way you understood what it meant to lose a father too soon. The way you looked at me like I mattered." He paused, his jaw working. "And I realized something. You weren't the only one lying, Amara." Amara's head snapped up. "What?" Chidi stood and walked to a small desk in the corner. He pulled out a folder and handed it to her. "Open it." With shaking hands, Amara opened the folder. Inside were documents, certificates, newspaper clippings. Her eyes widened as she read. "You have a master's degree in hotel management from Cornell University?" She looked up at him in shock. "You studied in America?" "Full scholarship," Chidi said quietly. "I graduated top of my class 3 years ago. I was recruited by Hilton, Marriott, Four Seasons. They all wanted me. But you told me you studied engineering at Unilag. You said you'd never left Nigeria." "I know what I said." Chidi's expression was pained. "And it was a lie. Just like yours." Amara's mind reeled. She flipped through more documents. Awards, recommendation letters from prominent hoteliers, job offers with salaries that would have made him wealthy by Nigerian standards. I don't understand. Why would you lie about this? Why work as an assistant operations manager when you could be running a hotel? Chidi sat down again, his shoulders heavy. For the same reason you pretended to be a cleaner. To find something real. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. When I came back to Nigeria 2 years ago, everyone wanted me for what I knew, what I could do for their businesses. Women were interested in the guy who'd made it abroad, who had American degrees and international connections. But nobody saw me, Chidi Okafor from Ajigunle. Nobody cared about the poetry I write or the dreams I have beyond hotels and money. So you took a lower position intentionally, Amara said slowly, understanding dawning. I came to the Golden Meridian as assistant operations manager because the actual operations manager, Mr. Adebayo, is my mentor. He knew my real credentials but agreed to keep them quiet. I wanted to work my way up on merit, to find people who would respect me for my work ethic and character, not my degrees or connections. And you wanted to find someone who would love you for who you are, not what you've achieved, Amara finished. Just like you. Chidi's laugh was bitter. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Both hiding behind false identities, both looking for authentic connection while being fundamentally dishonest. Amara set the folder aside and leaned forward. But there's a difference, Chidi. You were downplaying your achievements. I was pretending to struggle with hardships I've never really faced. What I did was worse. Was it? Chidi challenged. We both lied about who we were. We both manipulated the people around us. Maybe the specifics were different, but the betrayal is the same. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their mutual deceptions hanging between them. When did you know about me? Amara asked finally. I suspected something was off about 2 weeks in, Chidi admitted. Your hands were too soft for someone who'd been cleaning their whole life. You knew things about hotel management that a regular cleaner wouldn't know. And the way you moved sometimes, the authority in your voice when you forgot to hide it, it didn't match your story. But you didn't say anything. No, because I was curious. I wanted to see what you were really doing. And because, he paused, his voice softening. Because I was already falling for you, and I didn't want it to end. Amara's heart clenched. I fell for you too. That was never fake, Chidi. Everything I felt was real. But built on a foundation of lies. Chidi stood and walked to the window, looking out at the street below. That's the problem, isn't it? How do we know what was real and what was performance? When you laughed at my jokes, was that genuine or were you playing a role? When I shared my dreams with you, was I talking to Amara the cleaner or Amara the billionaire studying me like a lab rat? It was real, Amara insisted, standing as well. All of it. Yes, I was wearing a disguise, but my feelings were genuine. When you talked about your family, when you shared your poetry, when you looked at me like I was the most important person in the room, that meant everything to me. It still does. Then why didn't you tell me the truth? The pain in Chidi's voice cut through the room. We had 3 months, Amar. 3 months of conversations, of growing close, of building trust. At what point were you planning to come clean? I don't know, Amara admitted. I was terrified. Every day I wanted to tell you, but every day I was afraid that once you knew the truth, you'd see me differently. You'd see the money and the power and the Okonkwo name, and I'd lose the way you looked at me when I was just Amara. But I wasn't just Chidi either. His frustration boiled over. Don't you see? We were both so busy hiding our true selves that we never actually met. We fell in love with personas, with carefully constructed versions of each other. The accusation hung in the air, painful in its truth. But as Amara looked at Chidi, really looked at him, she saw something that gave her hope. He wasn't cold or distant. He was passionate, engaged, fighting for clarity. He cared enough to be angry, to demand truth, to struggle with this instead of simply walking away. You're wrong, Amara said quietly. We didn't fall in love with personas. We fell in love with the core of who we are. Yes, we lied about our circumstances, our backgrounds, our achievements. But the important things, the things that really matter, those were true. You really do send money to your mother and siblings. I really did lose my father and struggle with his expectations. You really are kind and thoughtful and brilliant. I really do care more about character than credentials. She moved closer to him, her voice urgent. The lies were about the external things, Chidi. The truth was about who we are inside. And that hasn't changed. Chidi turned to face her, and she could see the war in his eyes, the desire to believe fighting with the fear of being hurt again. How do I know, he whispered. How do I know that what I'm feeling is real and not just my imagination filling in the gaps? You don't, Amara said honestly. Just like I don't know if you really feel what you said you felt or if you were also playing a role. The only way to know is to start over. No more lies, no more hiding. Just two people trying to figure out if what they felt in those 3 months was strong enough to survive the truth. Chidi was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching her face. Then he walked to the desk again and pulled out something else. It was the worn notebook Amara had seen him write in during their breaks. I wrote this the night before the gala, he said, opening to a marked page. Before everything fell apart. I want you to read it. Amara took the notebook, her hands shaking. The page was filled with Chidi's neat handwriting, a poem titled simply Her. She reads like poetry and works like prose, finding beauty in tasks that nobody chose. Her hands may be cleaning, but her mind is free, seeing possibilities where others see debris. She laughs like music, like rain on the roof, turning ordinary moments into living proof that magic exists in the simplest things, in shared conversations and the hope that it brings. I watch her and wonder what secrets she keeps, what dreams fill her mind when Lego sleeps. But whatever she's hiding, whatever her past, I know that I've found something meant to last. So I'll tell her tomorrow, I'll take the risk, I'll say that I love her, I'll ask for a kiss. And whether she's running or standing still, I'll offer my heart and hope that she will. By the time Amara finished reading, tears were streaming down her face. You were going to tell me you loved me. I was, Chidi said, his own eyes wet. And then I found out who you really were, and I felt like I'd written that poem for a ghost. I'm not a ghost, Amara said fiercely. I'm right here, Chidi. Scared and flawed and sorry, but here. And I love you too. Not the version of you I thought I knew, but the real you. The one with the Cornell degree and the job offers you turned down. The one who writes poetry and sends money home. The one who's standing in front of me right now, brave enough to be angry and honest and real. Chidi reached out and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. I want to believe that. I want to believe we can start fresh. But Amara, the whole world knows about this now. Your board, the media, everyone. How do we build something real when we're under that kind of scrutiny? The same way we built something real the first time, Amara said. One honest conversation at a time. No more secrets, no more hiding. Just us, figuring it out together. Together, Chidi repeated, testing the word. Then, slowly, a small smile crossed his face. You know what's crazy? If we'd just been honest from the start, we probably would have never given each other a chance. You would have seen me as another guy after your money. I would have seen you as another wealthy woman looking for a project. The lies brought us together, even as they were destined to tear us apart. Then maybe we were meant to be torn apart so we could choose to come back together, Amara suggested. Not because we were hiding our true selves, but because we know our true selves and still choose each other. Chidi pulled her into his arms, and Amara felt something in her chest unlock, a tension she'd been carrying for days finally releasing. They stood there in his mother's small apartment, holding each other, two people who'd found and lost and found each other again. But as they stood there, Chidi's phone buzzed on the desk. He ignored it at first, but it buzzed again and again, insistent. I should check that, he said reluctantly, pulling away. It might be my mother. But when he looked at the screen, his face went pale. Amara, you need to see this. He turned the phone toward her, and she saw a news alert that made her blood run cold. The headline read, Okonkwo Holdings under investigation. Anonymous tip alleges financial misconduct. Below it was a photo, grainy but clear enough. It showed Amara in her cleaning uniform, but she wasn't cleaning. She was in one of the hotel's executive offices, going through files. The timestamp showed it was from 6 weeks ago, during one of her night shifts. What were you doing in those files? Chidi asked, his voice careful. I was researching the hotel's financial systems, looking for inefficiencies, Amara said, but even to her own ears it sounded weak. Chidi, this is bad. Someone's been watching me, documenting my movements. Someone's trying to destroy me. And as more notifications flooded Chidi's phone, as the news spread across Lagos like wildfire, Amara realized that her problems were far bigger than a broken heart or damaged reputation. Someone had been playing a much longer game, and she'd walked right into their trap. The question was, who? And what did they really want? Amara's phone erupted with calls. Folake, her mother, Uncle Emeka, board members, all trying to reach her simultaneously. But she ignored them all, her mind racing through possibilities. Who would do this? Chidi asked, still staring at the news alert. Who benefits from destroying you? I don't know, Amara said, but even as the words left her mouth, pieces began clicking into place. Wait, 6 weeks ago. That was right after I'd discovered something strange in the hotel's preliminary financial reports. She grabbed her own phone and pulled up her encrypted files, the ones she'd compiled during her undercover investigation. There were discrepancies in the construction contracts. Small ones, easy to miss unless you were looking closely. Someone was skimming money, hiding it in inflated supplier costs. How much money are we talking about? Nearly 40 million naira over the course of the build. Amara scrolled through her documentation. I was planning to present it to the board after the grand opening, once I had all the evidence compiled. But someone must have known I was investigating. Chidi's expression darkened. And now they're trying to flip the narrative, make it look like you were the one stealing. By using photos of me going through files while pretending to be a cleaner. Amara felt sick. It's actually brilliant. I can't explain what I was doing without admitting to the undercover operation, and the undercover operation makes me look unstable and deceptive. You need to call your lawyers. Now. But before Amara could dial, her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Against her better judgment, she answered. Ms. Okonkwo. The voice was male, cultured, with a slight Yoruba accent. I believe we should meet. Who is this? Someone who knows the truth about what you found in those files. Someone who can help you if you're willing to listen. If you have information about the financial misconduct, you should take it to the authorities. The man laughed, a sound like ice cracking. The authorities? Ms. Okonkwo, the authorities are already involved. Why do you think this story broke tonight? Someone with connections made sure the investigation would start before you could present your findings. Amara's blood ran cold. What do you want? Just a conversation. Tomorrow, noon, at the Radisson Blu in Victoria Island. The coffee shop on the ground floor. Come alone or don't come at all. The line went dead. Chidi had been listening, his face grave. You're not seriously considering meeting this person? I don't have a choice. If someone's framing me, I need to know who and why. Amara's mind was already working through strategies. But I won't go alone. I'll have security nearby, and I'll tell Folake and my lawyers where I'll be. I'm coming with you, Chidi said firmly. He said alone. I don't care what he said. You're not walking into a trap by yourself. Chidi's jaw was set in a way that told Amara arguing would be pointless. Besides, if this is about the hotel's finances, I'm involved too. I'm still an employee, still part of the operations team. I have a right to know if something corrupt is happening in my workplace. Amara wanted to argue, to protect him from whatever darkness was unfolding. But the truth was, she didn't want to face this alone. But we do this smart. We get legal counsel involved, we document everything, and at the first sign of danger, we walk away. They spent the next 3 hours at Chidi's apartment, Amara on her laptop pulling up every file she'd compiled, while Chidi made calls to contacts he had from his Cornell days, people in international hotel management who might have insights into financial fraud schemes. Around midnight, Folake arrived, having tracked Amara's location through her phone's GPS. She burst into the apartment, took one look at Amara and Chidi working together, and let out a long breath. Thank God. I was worried you two would never speak again. Then her expression hardened. But we have serious problems. The investigation isn't just looking at the hotel. They're auditing all of Okonkwo holdings. Every property, every transaction for the past 5 years. That's impossible, Amara said. That would require someone with serious influence to authorize that kind of scope. It gets worse. Folake pulled out her tablet. 3 board members called emergency votes tonight. They're trying to remove you as CEO pending the investigation results. They can't do that without my mother's vote, and she controls 40% of the shares. Your mother isn't answering anyone's calls, Folake said quietly. She's gone dark. The betrayal hit Amara like a physical blow. Her own mother, abandoning her when she needed support most. Or worse, perhaps Chioma was involved somehow, had finally found a way to push Amara out of the company she'd never thought her daughter was fit to run. There's someone else you need to worry about, Chidi said, looking up from his laptop. I've been digging into the construction contracts you flagged. The company that received most of the inflated payments is called Zenith Procurement Limited. It's a shell company, but I traced it back through 3 layers of holding companies. And? Amara leaned over his shoulder. It's owned by someone named Colonel Adebayo. Amara's stomach dropped. Mr. Adebayo? Your mentor? The operations manager? Chidi's face was ashen. I don't want to believe it, but the documentation is clear. He's been using his position to approve inflated contracts and funnel money to his own company. And Amara, he knew about my real credentials. He knew about your investigation because I told him I suspected you weren't who you claimed to be. When did you tell him? 3 weeks ago. I was conflicted about what to do, whether to confront you or report you to management. He convinced me to wait, to gather more information. Chidi's hands clenched into fists. He used me. He used my trust to find out what you knew so he could get ahead of your investigation. The pieces were falling into place now, a conspiracy more complex than Amara had imagined. Mr. Adebayo had been stealing from the hotel, had discovered through Chidi that Amara was investigating, and had orchestrated the exposure of her undercover operation to discredit her before she could reveal his crimes. We need to go to the police, Folake said. With what evidence? Amara countered. Everything I have was gathered while I was pretending to be someone else, potentially illegally accessing company files. A good lawyer will tear it apart. We need more, something that can't be dismissed as the desperate accusations of a disgraced CEO. Then what do we do? Amara looked at the news alerts still flooding in, at the photos of her in disguise, at the empire her father had built now threatened by corruption and conspiracy. She thought about everything she'd learned in her 3 months as a cleaner, about the real people whose lives depended on the hotel's success, about the truth she'd been seeking. We go to the meeting tomorrow, she said finally. We find out who called me and what they want. And we gather enough evidence to expose everyone involved, no matter who they are. That's dangerous, Chidi warned. Everything about this situation is dangerous. But I didn't build this hotel, didn't spend 3 months scrubbing floors and fighting for authenticity just to let corrupt people destroy it all. Amara's voice was steel. My father taught me that Okonkwo women don't run from fights. We face them head-on. The next morning arrived too quickly. Amara had barely slept, running through scenarios and strategies. She dressed carefully in a simple but elegant outfit, professional but not ostentatious. Chidi wore a suit, looking every inch the Cornell-educated hotel management expert rather than the humble assistant manager. They arrived at the Radisson Blu 15 minutes early. Amara's security team, led by a former DSS agent named Colonel, positioned themselves discreetly around the coffee shop. Folake and the lawyers waited in a car outside, ready to intervene if needed. At exactly noon, a woman entered the coffee shop. She was in her 50s, elegantly dressed, with an air of authority that Amara recognized immediately. This was someone used to power. The woman walked directly to Amara's table and sat down without invitation. Ms. Okonkwo. Mr. Okafor. Thank you for coming. You're not the person who called me, Amara said. No, I'm not. My employer prefers to remain anonymous for now. But I'm authorized to speak on his behalf. The woman signaled to the waiter. Coffee, please. Black, no sugar. Who are you? Chidi asked. My name is Mrs. Oganyemi. I'm a private investigator, and I've been watching you, Ms. Okonkwo, for quite some time. Not on behalf of Mr. Adebayo, as you might suspect, but on behalf of someone with a much larger stake in Okonkwo Holdings. My mother, Amara guessed. Mrs. Oganyemi smiled. Very astute. Yes, Mrs. Chioma Okonkwo hired me 6 months ago when she suspected financial irregularities in the company. She wanted an independent investigation, someone with no ties to the board or management. Why didn't she tell me? Because, Ms. Okonkwo, you were one of her suspects. The words hit like a slap. Amara stared at the investigator, trying to process this betrayal. My own mother thought I was stealing from the company? Not stealing, but perhaps mismanaging, making poor decisions, letting your grief over your father's death cloud your judgment. Mrs. Oganyemi's tone was matter-of-fact, not unkind. Your disappearance for 3 months only confirmed her concerns. She thought you might be having a breakdown. But you found out the truth, Chidi said. I did. I discovered Mr. Adebayo's scheme. I also discovered Ms. Okonkwo's undercover operation and her genuine efforts to improve the company. I reported all of this to Mrs. Okonkwo 2 weeks ago. Then why is she letting this investigation proceed? Why isn't she defending me? Amara's voice cracked with emotion. Mrs. Oganyemi leaned forward. Because she's playing a longer game. Mr. Adebayo isn't working alone. He has partners on your board of directors, people who've been systematically bleeding Okonkwo Holdings for years. Your mother wants all of them exposed, not just one corrupt operations manager. So she's using me as bait, Amara said bitterly. She's using the situation to flush out all the conspirators. They think they've won, that they've successfully discredited you and can now push you out while covering their tracks. But what they don't know is that we have evidence of everything. Financial transfers, recorded conversations, documented meetings. We've been building a case for months. Mrs. Oganyemi pulled out a flash drive and placed it on the table. This contains everything you need to clear your name and destroy theirs. But there's a condition. What condition? Amara asked warily. That you let the investigation play out for 1 more week. Let them think they've won. Let them get comfortable and make mistakes. Some of the conspirators are still hidden, and we need them to reveal themselves. A week? Chidi shook his head. The damage to Amara's reputation, to the hotel, to the company, it could be irreparable. Or it could be the greatest comeback story in Nigerian business history, Mrs. Oganyemi countered. The billionaire who went undercover exposed corruption and saved her father's legacy. That's the narrative we're building, but only if we do this right. Amara looked at the flash drive, then at Chidi, then back at the investigator. What does my mother want in return? Nothing. She wants her daughter back. She wants the company saved. She wants justice. Mrs. Oganyemi stood. But she also wants you to prove that you're strong enough to weather this storm. That you're worthy of the Okonkwo name. After Mrs. Oganyemi left, Amara and Chidi sat in silence, the flash drive between them like a ticking bomb. Do you trust her? Chidi asked finally. I don't know, Amara admitted. But I trust my mother's instincts, even if I'm hurt by her methods. She loved my father, loved this company. She wouldn't let it be destroyed. Then what do we do? Amara picked up the flash drive. We look at what's on here. We verify the evidence. And then we decide whether to wait a week or to blow everything up now. They returned to Chidi's apartment, where Folake and the lawyers were waiting. Together, they went through the files on the flash drive. What they found was staggering. Mr. Adebayo was just one piece of a much larger conspiracy involving 3 board members, 2 government officials, and a rival hotel chain that wanted to acquire Okonkwo Holdings at a fire sale price. The plan had been ingenious. Bleed the company slowly through inflated contracts and hidden fees, then create a scandal to tank the stock price and force a sale. Amara's undercover operation had been an unexpected complication, but they turned it to their advantage, using it to make her look unstable and untrustworthy. If we release this now, we win, Folake said. We expose everyone, save the company, clear your name. But some of them will escape, Chidi noted, studying the files. Look here. There are references to the silent partner, someone even Mrs. Oganyemi hasn't identified. If we move too soon, that person stays hidden and could try again in the future. Amara stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Lagos skyline. Somewhere out there, people were plotting the destruction of everything her father had built. Somewhere out there, her mother was playing a dangerous game of chess with the company's future as stakes. And somewhere inside herself, Amara had to find the strength to trust the process, to endure one more week of public humiliation and doubt for the sake of complete justice. We wait, she said finally. But we don't wait passively. We use this week to build our own case, to gather our own evidence, to prepare for the moment when we strike back. She turned to face her team. And when we do strike, it won't just be about saving Okonkwo Holdings. It'll be about changing the entire system, showing that corruption doesn't pay, that integrity matters, that the truth always comes out. Chidi stood and walked to her side. Together, Amara confirmed, taking his hand. But neither of them saw the camera across the street, capturing their moment of connection. Neither of them knew that the silent partner Mrs. Oganyemi hadn't identified was closer than they could have imagined, watching their every move, already planning the next devastating blow. The game was far from over, and the most dangerous player hadn't even revealed themselves yet. Now I want to ask you something. If you were in Amara's position, would you wait the full week and risk everything? Or would you expose the conspiracy immediately and possibly let some conspirators escape? There's no right answer, just what you would do. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next chapter. Share this with someone who loves a good story about justice and redemption. Chapter 6 is going to reveal the identity of the silent partner, and trust me, you will not see this coming. The betrayal goes deeper than anyone imagined.